So at the time of recording, I've just finished making the video comparing Tear with follow-up and coming to the conclusion that Tear is generally a significantly better dragon skill than follow-up. And I figured it would probably make sense to cover the maths on Flame as well as the other synergy follow-up dragon skill, just to see where it stacks up against Tear and follow-up, to see if bleed builds are losing out or gaining any damage or synergy with assist compared to the other synergy types. So again, like in the Tear and follow-up one, I've done a ton of testing and maths going through all the formulas of putting through the proc rates through the required criteria for it to proc to just find mathematical averages. I have done it for Kravras as well, and I feel like I proved the point quite well of what I've said in previous videos about how Kravras is fairly negligible in his synergy with his skill. Because the thing to remember is that it procs off every 10 additional attacks triggered by Kravras or Sinara. So with Sinara, when you actually do the maths on her 4-star ability and figure out the averages of how many additional normal attacks this ability will give, it will be at 4-star without her weapon. That's what this means realistically. It will go to 2.1 normal attacks. It'll be 1.1 above the default value. When her weapon goes to 4-star, that will go to 3, so it will be 2 above the default value. With Kravras, it's only 1.2. So it's only 0.2 above the default value. So Sinara, even without her weapon, is 5.5 times better at triggering extra normal attacks, which will obviously give her way more synergy with Flame. Plus the fact you can run Flame through multiple lines, so you can run Inf Cav if you're in AC and defending with Inf Cav and Spears in there. That will all contribute to Sinara multi-procking more and more normal attacks and then funneling that through the Flame procs as much as possible. So in all these tests, I'm honestly not going to linger on these tests too much because I think they're very unlucky RNG wise. But I've done the same thing as I did in the Tear and follow-up video where Flame here was level 8, so you gain 10% proc rate going from 8 to 9. So I've just multiplied up the proc values by 1.33 just to normalize the values to make it a fair comparison to everything else. So first test, it was 5.32 procs. Second, it was 1.33. Then 5.32 again. Then 4 basically. Then 2.66. So when I actually do the maths on what this should be, I feel like I've gone very unlucky on Dell's account testing all this. So I won't linger on these too much. And when looking at the results I got for multiple lines, I don't think there's bugs or anything. I think it was just luck. So if we actually look at the maths of what it should be realistically, in the first report I counted up all the normal attacks from infantry before they went through Sinara's multi-procking, and I double checked it with another report on my main account as well, and the number I got was 150 normal attacks. So the only relevant thing is the additional attacks we get through Sinara, so we have to put it through the respective multiplier. If you want the full maths on all this stuff, by the way, it is in the Bleed Synergy video I made a little while back. So at 4-star Sinara without her weapon, that would be 165 extra normal attacks. And if doing it with Sinara with her weapon at 4-star, that will be 300 extra normal attacks. So we then divide that by the 40% proc rate multiplier, and then of course it only procs every 10 normal attacks, so we divide that by 10, and Sinara without her weapon should average with mono inf at 6.6 flame procs, which is actually higher than an all-female composition with Layla and a one-line weakness setup will without the healer's weapon. It's all about the same though. It's clearly quite deliberately designed, so it's all within like 10% of each of them. But if you have her weapon at 4-star, it almost doubles it, which of course is way different compared to Tear and follow-up. Layla's weapon being 4-star doesn't even increase the chance of this by 25%, and of course Jamie's weapon has no effect on this at all. So this seems to be a consistent trend with Bleed, where leveling up Sinara's weapon is just insanely important because of how you can use all these additional normal attack procs through various effects to get more crits through rare, more bleeds through rare, and so on. But then I tested it through multiple lines. So we saw with Tear, when you add multiple lines into it, it becomes like ridiculous compared to follow-up, which is where its main strength was. And Flame is the exact same, actually. So again, I feel like I get very unlucky with this first Inf Cav test, but then I run it as 3 lines, and it hits the cap of 10 at 27 seconds, and that's only with the skill at level 8, so it only has the 30% proc chance. And what that means is basically any iteration of multiple lines will surpass that 10 flame procs maximum, regardless of Sinara weapon or any factors like that. Because even in the worst case scenario, which would be 2 lines without the weapon, which would be this maths, that would be an average of 13.2 flame procs. So anything above that with the weapon, with more lines, you'll easily go past the 10 proc maximum. So for stuff like AC, where you're forced to defend of multiple lines, this will be hugely, hugely valuable. And then, as I said at the start of the video, I tested through Kravras. There were 90 normal bow attacks in this. It's much lower than the melee units in terms of number of attacks, it seems. And there were 18 extra normal attacks. So putting that through the 40% proc rate, it was 7.2. Divide that by 10. And Kravras doesn't even average 1 flame proc a fight. So you will go fights where flame doesn't even proc with Kravras. And I think this is why some people have mixed reports on if it even works with him, because they check reports and it doesn't proc. And it's, oh, I guess it doesn't actually work with him. No, it does, but it's just such a low proc rate to the point of it potentially not even triggering at all. So when the whole flame is actually up there with Tear, both of them are much better than follow-up. You obviously just can't hybrid flame with anything else because of the nature of Sinara, but multi-lined bleed builds will basically serve the same functionality as multi-line Tear builds. You'll easily hit the cap of 10 without any effort at all, and you can then put that through assist and try and proc assist as many times as possible. Of course, if you hit the cap of 10 and then you go through the assist 40% chance, you'll average at 4 assist procs per fight alone just from that synergy skill, which is very significant. That'll be a lot of healing, a lot of practical army size. And yeah, I very, very much advise, if you're running a bleed build, to get your hands on the Flame Dragon skill, because it is exceptionally good, especially if you are a AC rally leader or running Inf Cav as a main formation or anything like that. It is an incredibly good skill.